Welcome, everyone. This is Carol Murphy. I cover product marketing for the Voltage portfolio in the Micro Focus security business. Thank you very much for joining us today. We have an exciting program ahead of us. We'll hear directly from 3 of our customers describing how they use Voltage secure data, their experience, their journey, insights, and best practices. First, we will hear from Klaus Brand. I'll go through this agenda for you. So first, we will hear from Klaus Brand, Head of Department Service Provisioning of Swisscom. Swisscom is the leading provider of communication, IT, and entertainment in Switzerland. And after Klaus' presentation, then we will hear from Jason Buck, Vice President Information Security Senior Manager of Wells Fargo, a multinational financial services company headquartered in San Francisco, California. And following Jason Buck's presentation, we will hear from Dave Mulligan, Enterprise Cybersecurity Engineer from Fiserv Inc. Incorporated. Fiserv is a global provider of technology solutions to the financial world, including banks, credit unions, insurance companies, and others. And then following Dave's presentation, we will hear from Rainer Kappenberger, Director of Product Management for Voltage. Rainer will provide us with an update on what is new with the Voltage portfolio capabilities. So, welcome again. Thank you all for joining us. We're excited to have you today. And without further ado, let's get started. So, Klaus Brand of Swisscom, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carol, for the nice introduction. Also from my side, I wish you a good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on which time zone you are. I would like to share with you our experience we made with implementation of Micro Focus Voltage at Swisscom. My name is Klaus Brandt. I'm the product manager at Swisscom for certain security products, and in addition, I had the pleasure to act as a project manager for the implementation of the end-to-end encryption solution. I will walk you shortly. I will present Swisscom as a company, describe the initial requirements we had when we started the project, the approach we selected, the infrastructure we set up, the deployment method we choose, give some information on the implementation timeline, and finish with lessons learned during the project. So first, just some words about Swisscom. Switzerland, we are here, the red dot. For Swiss standards, we are a rather big company. The business areas we are focusing on are providing ultra-fast broadband connections, for example, to our residential customers of 1 gigabit per second. We were one of the first companies to start with the rollout of 5G. We are a cloud service provider, and we are offering security services to our enterprise customers, just to mention some of our business areas. So, where did that all started? In 2018, we started an initiative driven by our senior management to improve further the protection of our sensitive data. One of the requests coming out of this initiative had been to create an end-to-end data encryption platform, which is then going to be offered as an internal service. The platform had to be system independent and then allow protection of data at rest and in transit. One of the requirements had been that using the service should require no or only minimal modification on the existing systems and databases, and the performance impact on the system should be kept minimal. One of the major business processes together with the supporting system had been selected to be onboarded as the first application on this end-to-end encryption platform. In total, there were 15 applications and about 10 million data sets which were impacted. And we were requested before starting with any implementation to run a thorough proof of concept to validate the most important use cases. So in the following slides, I will walk you through to the different steps we took to implement this service. So first of all, we said to fulfill those requirements, the first step was to get select a general encryption approach. To be as much as possible independent on the specific systems which are supported by the before mentioned business process, we selected the data-centric approach. So I hope I can show you. So essentially it was to protect the data rather than protecting the parameter to protect the databases. Based on the need-to-know principle, on certain systems will then be allowed to encrypt or decrypt the sensitive data. Thanks to the format-preserving encryption, the fact that the data is encrypted is transparent for the databases where the data are stored, the system interfaces, as well as the systems who are actually only transferring the data, but not actually working for them. In addition, we selected this what it's called this embedded format preserving encryption, which allow us to store also certain key information directly in the data themselves. When we designed the underlying encryption platform, we considered the high requirements on stability, on availability, performance on the system, as well as future scalability. So we set up, I really hope you can see that, we set up in two geo-redundant data centers, twice this secure data appliances, and also two HSM, the hardware security modules. On front, we had a F5 load balancer who then could handle the traffic going to this encryption platform. The first business process we had to be secured with this end-to-end encryption consists of a central system which manages the data, as well as 15 data consumers and providers. Considering the criticality of the system and the number of connected systems, as well as the overall complexity, we decided that a big bang approach to switch to fully end-to-end encryption was not feasible. So the approach which we actually choose is we first duplicated the sensitive data in the database by creating an encryption copy. Then we provided two interfaces to this data, to the data in plain text as well as in data in encrypted form. Here, that's showing again centrally the central system, where we first encrypted all the data. Then started with the decryption at the interfaces to the connected systems. So at this point in time, the fact that the data is centrally encrypted was transparent for the connected systems. And then stepwise, we moved the decryption interface to the connected systems. So one by one, over time, we moved this point without actually impacting the functionality in the business. Here on the following slide, just to show you a bit about the complexity of the real systems, which had been grown over years. No? And I think if you're in charge of existing systems and infrastructures, you know what I'm talking about. Understanding the flow of specific data, the application requirements, can sometimes be challenging, but understanding the full data flow in the system, it's really crucial to the success of the project. So how long does it actually took us? So as I said, we started in 2018. We had some periods to collect the requirements, to set up a proof of concept, which was then successful and presented to our management. And then we had a certain period of planning, certain period of planning, budgeting, of approval process, and contract negotiation. So last year, beginning of the third quarter, essentially, we started with setting up the infrastructure. We had to set up 3 independent environments: development, pre-prod, and the production environment, which was running actually rather quickly. And then in October last year, we had this one-time encryption, which ran very well. And then following this step-by-step onboarding of the connected system has started. So in the end, in line with the overall project plan, we finished the project this year by end of June. So that was running very smooth and without any impact on the system. So to sum up, so what did we learn out of the project and what I could offer you as an advice? I think it had been very beneficial for us to allow sufficient time for selecting the right encryption approach for our needs, for your needs, and when you run the project, study with the POC your major use cases before starting with the actual implementation. During this phase, we learned a lot. We also trained our people, and I think it was a time well spent. Next to the importance of next to it is the importance of completely understanding the underlying business processes and the actual data flow. I think this is in particular valid for complex systems, and here we actually, I must say, underestimated the effort. Further, we decided to create a high redundant encryption platform for the production environment. The redundancy, the security and performance of this environment should be in line with your business criticality, which you're handling, of the supported business processes. And it helps, at least me, it helps to sleep well at night without worrying that something is going down. You should also allow enough time for proper training of your team, which is going to support the encryption platform. And this team, then we set up a fixed team. This team should then also consult then your internal business in making best use of this encryption platform. So I think you get as a company best profit out of the system. And the importance of the proper integration of the encryption system in your enterprise monitoring system, I think it's needless to say. Further, it had been very beneficial for us to work together with an integration partner experienced in the voltage technology. Prior to the project, we didn't have this knowledge. That really helped us a lot to find the best approach to set up the environments and to get our people up to speed on this new technology. Here in Switzerland, we worked with a Braven company. I could give their advice. A company I can really highly recommend. Last but not least, I can say that we are very happy with the encryption system. It is running very stable since last year, October, and we have almost no operational efforts there. And as overseeing many services, I can say this cannot be taken for granted, and I really appreciate it. Then I would like to say thank you. Many greetings from Switzerland, and I will give back to you, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Klaus, Dr. Brand. Thank you. That was excellent. You know, I want to mention that if our listeners have a question for Klaus Brand, you can put it into the presenter chat, and he will see it and can answer. And you can do that at any time. So please feel free to use the chat. That's the window. It says Q&A. And we will give that just a minute to, or if you put it in, he can answer to you directly in the chat. Okay, very good, very good. Well, thank you very much, Klaus, for your presentation. That was extremely informative.
Thank you.
Quite a journey. Yes.
It's a pleasure.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So it's quite a journey. Excellent insights, and thank you for sharing those insights with the others. It's very much appreciated. Good. I do see that someone has brought up a question for you, Klaus. So you may want to take a moment for that. But good.
Okay, so there's one question. How often you do the encryption? Essentially, we did one time a full encryption, and we're setting up a process for rekeying. So we will re-encrypt everything after 12 months, and we are able to re-encrypt everything in case of any kind of security incident.
Very good.
Then there's one question of EIS encryption and support of TDS. I think, James, I will get back to you on this specifically, on this question.
Great. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, now we will, thank you very much. That was terrific. And now we'll hear from our next customer presenter. We'll introduce Jason Buck of Wells Fargo. Jason, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Carol. Well, hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're connecting in from today. So I've been working in IT since 1993, and specifically worked in information security at Wells Fargo for almost 20 years now. So I'm really happy to be here today to speak about our experience at Wells Fargo with the implementation of the Voltage Secure Data product, working in information security and data protection for 20 years. It's a topic I'm very passionate about. But first, let me share a little bit of information about my company. So Wells Fargo & Company is a diversified, community-based financial services company with currently around $1.9 trillion in assets, that's U.S. dollars. Wells Fargo's vision as a company is to satisfy our customers' financial needs and help them succeed financially. Wells Fargo is the third largest bank in the United States based on deposits, and we are the sixth largest bank based on total assets. Wells Fargo operates in over 7,000 locations in the United States. We have over 70 million customers, and we do serve 1 in every 3 households here in the United States. Additionally, Wells Fargo has a global presence doing business across North and South America, Europe, and Asia, as well as some other areas. Also on the line with me today, I have 2 of my colleagues. Colleen Freeman is with us today. She's the direct manager over the team in my organization that manages our voltage implementation here at Wells Fargo, and she's a direct report to me. Also a direct report to Colleen is our lead engineer for the Voltage Secure Data product. That's Greg Wright. So Colleen and Greg are both here with us today. They'll be monitoring the question chat there, and they may be responding interactively with you guys in the chat, or if they find questions that look good for the whole group, they'll bring those up here when I finish my presentation. So let me get on to what I'm here to talk to you guys about, the specifics of our implementation. I don't have slides, but I will just kind of run through this with you all verbally. So regarding our original drivers to implement Voltage Secure Data, we basically had started this journey back in 2015. We had our wholesale line of business, which purchased the voltage secure data product specifically for a use case they had to protect sensitive data at rest. Really, it's just part of their normal course of risk mitigation and trying to address audit and compliance concerns. The voltage product was not long after that adopted as a company-wide solution, and it does remain our company-wide standard for application integrated encryption as well as tokenization. As far as implementation drivers that have occurred over time, I would tell you that the primary drivers for our use of the product do remain largely unchanged. We're really looking to become compliant with policies and ensure that we're protecting our customers' data effectively. In addition to that, more recently we started leveraging voltage specifically for PCI DSS compliance, so that's the payment card industry data security standards. That's really probably become a bigger driver for the use of voltage secure data, specifically to tokenize what we call PAN data, which is our debit and credit card numbers and so forth across our various systems. So our implementation footprint has grown to provide that capability to be PCI DSS compliant, which has now included what we call a cardholder data environment or a network enclave where we run voltage specifically as part of fulfilling the full compliance with PCI DSS. As far as the size of our implementation today, we have over 100 applications that are protected across multiple platforms. So we run voltage on open systems platforms like Linux and Windows, but we also protect larger platforms like ZOS mainframe, as well as some others. As far as our infrastructure supporting this implementation, we have currently about 53 of the secure data software-based appliances deployed between our regular environment and also that CDE or cardholder data enclave environment. We do optionally implement the code safe secure environment on the Entrust Enshield HSMs. So we use those HSMs to run with the voltage secure data code to generate keys. This secure environment verifies the code before running it, which maintains code integrity and ensures the code conforms to the HSM policies. Obviously, using an HSM with voltage is optional. It's not required, just something that we like to do. Some people like to say that we're a little bit paranoid about information security here at Wells Fargo. I'll take that. I think it's probably a good stance to have, considering we're protecting millions of customers' personal information as well as financial data. So let me talk about a few of our key successes along the way here. So over the time we've been working with voltage, we've successfully onboarded, as I mentioned, over 100 applications to the solution to address our data at rest encryption and tokenization requirements. We stood up our CDE environment across 2019 and into 2020, so we basically just finished setting that enclave up earlier this year. And we've since started migrating applications to that new CDE infrastructure as well for the use of secure data. We successfully completed an implementation this year for our Teradata platform. So that's another sort of mid-range or mainframe, depending on how you slice it, larger scale platform that we use specifically for data analytics here at Wells, and had good success with the implementation of voltage with the format preserving encryption for that Teradata platform. We've worked to make our implementation more efficient by utilizing an API layer to front-end application onboarding engagements, and we are utilizing some shared identities and formats as well to make our implementation more efficient. In addition to that, we've implemented toll gates in our application sunrise process to ensure that we begin implementing data protection at earlier stages of development before new apps go to production versus the majority of our existing implementations that were done for legacy applications. Those were largely done integrating secure data into existing applications that were already in production. As you can imagine, that can sometimes be a bigger challenge to take an existing legacy application, some of which maybe have a bit of what we might call spaghetti code in them, not exactly simple, to integrate the calls. So that can sometimes be a challenge, but we do have a significant number of our implementations, probably the majority, that are those legacy apps where we implemented Voltage. But again, we've made changes to our onboarding or our Sunrise process for new applications to ensure that something like Voltage can be considered for implementation when the application is first being designed and developed, making it obviously a lot more efficient to integrate versus trying to retrofit it to an older application. Both can be done, of course, but it's more efficient, I think, to implement these kinds of protections to a new application as it's being developed. As far as some challenges that we overcame along the way, so we've had some issues with getting application developers and app owners to buy into this concept of having to modify their applications to leverage secure data. In many cases, it was perceived as too difficult to implement the product due to the necessary code changes. Some of the things we did to address this, we hired engineers in our team that had application development experience and helped and used or leveraged these resources to help guide our line of business application partners regarding how to implement secure data. And in the process, really, we've created a center of excellence within our team of engineers that not only support the infrastructure and the general engineering work required to maintain a large-scale implementation in a large company for Voltage secure data, but it also has, like I said, engineers with developer experience that can literally sit down with application development teams, maybe that are not security experts, like they know their application, but they maybe are not real familiar with how to integrate security products. So we have some people that can kind of handhold our app dev partners during that integration to make that easier for them to adopt. We did also try to leverage some early adopter application teams to form strong partnerships as part of that center of excellence. So when we were in the infancy stage of maybe just the first, say, 5 or 10 applications, we did a lot of partnering across those application development teams. So as app developers became comfortable with using Voltage in their applications, we would leverage those partnerships and have them work with the next set of application teams that we're going to integrate. So as we were building up our expertise within our core team and building our center of excellence, we had to develop partnerships with other app dev teams, leverage that capability to continue to grow, and still do refer to some of those app partners, although at this point I think we have the majority of our expertise in our center of excellence in our core team and are able to support new implementations as they occur. But I think it's a great way to get started in the beginning stages to have app partners that implement successfully, have them help out your other app partners that maybe are the next ones to implement. I would additionally say that the Micro Focus vendor engineering was very helpful with the integration. We do have some professional services hours we purchased to help support application integrations and deployments. We had to do a lot of customization with some of our legacy applications to leverage the tool. So that certainly helped out getting that support directly from Micro Focus experts, as well as in line working with our Center of Excellence team as well. So as far as what's next and what are our challenges we're still working to overcome, so we're planning in the coming year, 2021, to move to the Voltage Secure Data 7.x platform. So this will mean moving to an entirely new architecture for the infrastructure, leveraging Kubernetes, which is still a fairly new technology for general use within Wells Fargo. So there's a lot for us to learn on that front in working with the Kubernetes container-based platform and running this infrastructure in that vehicle. We also continue to work on the challenges with getting developer or app owner buy-in to modify applications. Even with all we've done over the past 5+ years implementing this successfully and getting over 100 applications deployed with Voltage, we do still sometimes have app teams that perceive it as difficult to make the code changes required. So we continue to work at ensuring that we have the capability to guide people and make that easier for them to implement the changes required to leverage secure data. I would also comment that in some cases the vendor licensing model is a little bit difficult to understand and do reporting on internally. So when we're working with our internal software license compliance teams and our supply chain management teams or our vendor management, we do sometimes have a level of complexity there for the licensing model that I know Micro Focus is definitely working on trying to improve that. I think this might be less of a challenge for smaller or less regulated organizations, so it could just be difficult for us because we have these very strict requirements being a financial institution. We're also looking at solutions for our needs for analytics and metrics on downstream applications' use of secure data, and our ability to really extrapolate data from servers into a monitoring and reporting console or dashboard. So that's another thing that we'll be working on in the future. The last thing I'll share with you about challenges is, and I think that Klaus talked about this a little bit before, which is this data center or data-centric approach to data protection. So we really continue to work on that bigger picture approach with our app dev team partners. What I mean by that is trying to get our application development team partners to understand the benefit of data-centric protection, getting our partners to really think company-wide about keeping data protected as it moves through various systems and applications. As you can imagine, in a large financial services institution, we literally have thousands of applications, many of which handle sensitive data that needs this kind of protection. So if we can take a more global view at keeping this data protected as it moves from one application to another, it's a much more efficient way to implement the tool. So I would definitely advise anyone that's trying to grow their implementation to think about that where we struggled as a company was that most of our app partners are very specifically focused on the boundaries of their application. In other words, they want to protect or unprotect data within the boundaries of their application. They're not thinking, more globally about how this data could stay in a protected format as they feed it to other applications downstream or as they get data fed to them from applications upstream. So I would really encourage anyone who's looking to grow their implementation to think about that data-centric approach and how do you look more globally at a program to implement the product across multiple applications. Getting cooperation between those applications can really lead to a much more efficient implementation across the board. This still remains a challenge for us today to get our app team dev partners to work collectively across that landscape versus being more focused on just their specific app boundaries, but something we'll continue to work away at. So that's everything I have to share for now. I'll take a minute here to see if Colleen or Greg have any questions that came up that they think may be interesting to the group. Colleen or Greg, anything to share?
No questions from for the group, Jason.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Colleen. So with that, I will turn it back over to Carol. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your experience and your insights and that view to the future as well, and the comments that you made about looking globally at data-centric security. Thank you very much for relating your experience. We really appreciate it. And now we will turn to our next customer speaker, Dave Mulligan. We'll go over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Carol. Good morning, everybody from California. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Dave Mulligan. I work for Fiserv. Fiserv is a Fortune 500 financial technology company. We're listed on the NASDAQ. We were founded in 1984, and we are currently the #1 merchant acquirer in the credit card industry and globally. We also process a lot of back-end bank account. We do a lot of back-end bank account processing for banks and credit unions, etc. We are a service industry a service provider to the financial services industry. So we are very large. We currently service more than 1 billion credit card accounts. That is, we do the back-end processing for those billion credit card accounts in over 100 companies. And we process payments valued at more than $3 trillion a year with almost 3.5 million transactions an hour. So we operate at a very, very high scale level. And a little bit about me. I joined Fiserv in early 2020 after spending 16 years in the professional services group at Voltage, where I was involved in many of our customer rollouts of secure data. One of the customer rollouts that I was involved with, going from 2015, was with a company called First Data. And in 2019, Fiserv and First Data merged. So the combined organization looked at a whole bunch of differing ways that the two companies had done various functions and chose the best of breed in each area. And in the data security area, the approach that was chosen was to adopt the same mechanism that First Data had taken, which is Voltage Secure Data. So suddenly we had essentially half of our company was now a greenfield opportunity to implement Voltage inside those applications. So we had a really, really unusual opportunity. We had essentially a do-over. We could look back at what we had done within First Data and say, okay, what went well? What didn't go so well? How are we going to change what we did to make it more smooth for what we call the original Fiserv? I may fall into jargon here, but we talk about original Fiserv and original First Data. So what we're looking to do is take the processes that we used and developed within original First Data and apply them to original Fiserv. And there were three main things that we did. The first thing that we did was we developed a Tiger team. I'm just going to enumerate them and then I'll talk about them in more detail. So we developed a Tiger team of people who can help application teams, similar to what Jason was referring to. Secondly, we implemented a wrapper around the Voltage Simple API to expose just the functionality that we wanted. And thirdly, we created a self-help area where a whole bunch of information is available for developers and application teams to come and find out about Voltage, about how to use it, code samples, all that sort of stuff. So going back to talk about those three things in a little more detail, when we looked back at the application integration, because in common with Wells Fargo, we have thousands of applications, and doing what we do, almost all of them have some sort of sensitive financial information, whether it be a credit card number, bank account number, what have you. Those are the two big ones we have. We also have a lot of social security numbers. So when we looked back at the experience with the First Data team applications, we realized that while most of the applications had been almost turnkey, that had needed very little hand-holding, there were some applications where, for various reasons, whether it's just a unique environment or other considerations, where they had needed more hand-holding. And in a couple of those applications, what had actually been done is we had worked with Voltage Professional Services teams to actually essentially parachute in a Voltage expert to sit with the application developers on that team and help them integrate Voltage into their application. So whether it's somebody working in C or C++ or Java, whatever language they were working in, we found that in the couple of times we did that, that was a very effective tactic to get the application team essentially unblocked. Because sometimes, as Jason mentioned, people look at this and they think, oh, it's going to be hard, and it really isn't. But having an expert there who can just say, this is the way to get started, makes that a huge hugely less imposing barrier. So we actually recruited a team of very high-level developers, people who specialize in C, some specialize in C#, some specialize in Java, and we then trained those guys in Voltage, and we actually helped use, as one of the ways we got them up to speed with Voltage, was to create the wrapper around the simple API, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But once those guys became very confident with the Voltage tools, they then became a resource that we can effectively loan out to application teams for short periods of time. Now, they may need an application team may need nothing more than a couple of hours to say, how do I get this installed? How do I set it up, etc. Or they may need more extensive help with actual coding and walking through. But we found it's a really good synergy between an application developer who knows his application domain really well, and to marry that with a Voltage expert who knows secure data well, is a really good way to get teams moving quickly. The second thing that we did was to develop a wrapper around the simple API. And what that does for us is it simplifies even further the interface to the Voltage secure data servers. So there are, the simple API by definition has to do everything that the simple API can do. It's a product that has to expose everything. And we don't need everything that the simple API can do. So we decided to build a wrapper that further simplifies the Voltage simple API and exposes just what we want, and also encapsulates some policy decisions. For example, we have a policy decision that says you are not allowed to use the key caching to disk feature of the simple API. We, being a financial services company, are pretty paranoid about things like that. So that logic is embedded into our wrapper. So an end user developer can't accidentally make a mistake with that. The third leg, if you like, of the approach that we took was to further develop a SharePoint site to support our efforts. SharePoint is our corporate direction for internal knowledge sharing, and it has changed over the last few years. 4 or 5 years ago, SharePoint was basically just a place where you would dump a set of files, and if you knew what information was there and you knew which file to look for, it was great. As a knowledge discovery platform, not so much. But recent versions of SharePoint have become much more wiki-like, and so we have taken advantage of that to make a center of knowledge for our Voltage community within Fiserv. We have something in excess of 70 separate pages of information available on our internal SharePoint. And looking at the usage stats, as I did just before now to check, we're getting somewhere in excess of 2,000 hits a week on that. And if only some of those hits are finding the information they require, that's still saving us a significant amount of email traffic and email questions back and forth. So while this approach may not work for everybody, I mean, it's definitely an investment, and it's a recognition of, it's a mirror of how important data security is to Fiserv, that we've made this investment in this team and these tools. But this has really helped us to roll out quickly and effectively to the applications that were part of original Fiserv. When we compare the rollout speed of the applications within that was achieved within original first data with the speed we're achieving now within original Fiserv, we are significantly faster. We have many more applications working in parallel with this approach because we are able to effectively parse out our target team resources across teams, so we're not, by no means are we single-threaded. And we're finding this is really, really working for us. It lets application teams focus on their applications while still, and gives them access to experts for the voltage system. And one other thing to sort of chime in with something that Jason mentioned on his presentation. We are also strongly in the encrypted as early as you can and leave it encrypted as long as you can school of thought. We also have common data encryption formats across all our applications. So the concept is that any application within Fiserv can access knows how to handle voltage encrypted data. So if they need the plain text, they can get it. If they don't need the plain text, then they can just work with the encrypted data and it stays secure. And that vision of the data-centric encryption is definitely something that has wholeheartedly been adopted by Fiserv. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Carol.
Great. Thank you, Dave Mulligan. Really appreciate it. And do you want to take just a moment in case there's a question that either you want to answer individually in the chat to that questioner or anything you want to add? We'll take a moment for that.
There is a question from Joseph Gonzalez that I will answer over the phone here. You do absolutely have to keep track of which data is encrypted and which is not. That's kind of a data hygiene issue. If you've got to know your data flows, and so when you that's the first thing that we do with an application team when they come to the Tiger team to do an initial onboarding session. We say, okay, walk us through your data flows. Tell us where your sensitive data is, because without knowing that, you're just shooting in the dark. And most teams have a reasonable handle on that. Some teams have to go and do some research.
Very good. Any other questions, Dave? Or?
Nope, that's it, I think.
Nope.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Great information and best insights, best practices insights. I really appreciate it. So good. Thank you. And next we'll hear from Rainer Kappenberger. Rainer, over to you.
Thank you, Carol. And I'm Rainer Kappenberger. I'm the Director of Product Management for the voltage parts in Micro Focus. And since the voltage portfolio has expanded recently, I wanted to take this opportunity to explain to all of you what the new voltage data privacy and protection portfolio is about. So for voltage, everything is centered around the data, and we surround the data with analytics and machine learning capabilities to better understand what happens in your data environment. And for that one, we provide certain aspects because, as you've heard from the previous speakers as well, one key aspect in the data protection side is actually to understand what data you have, and that's the data discovery component. And in there, we provide discovery for both structured as well as unstructured data that actually looks into the data and not only particular elements like there is a 10-digit number, must be a credit card, which typically generates as well a lot of false positives. We look at the context surrounding the information. And with this, we can guarantee that this is actually a credit card. It's also about the depths and the breadth of PII detection that you can do and the different data types. So it's not only about identifying here's a name. We can go to the level that in your database, the distribution is like 60% French names, 20% German, 20% English. This all leads to minimizing the false positives, which in data discovery is a big problem. And we don't create copies of the data, we analyze the data right in its place. With all the discovery that we do, you can now gain insight into your data itself. We can visualize the risk impact, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about, of a new functionality that we're going to introduce into the product that gives you a better understanding of the actual risk that you have with data. But you can also look into, for example, on a particular SharePoint, who really has access to the data. In this HR SharePoint, you might actually find that people outside of HR have some access to the data, which should not have happened. You can then apply data lifecycle policies based on the content, based on the age, the permissions, the relevancy, or even the risk of the data onto the particular data sites. And as the question has been as well about the inventory, yes, you can see actually on your database what is inside. So the deep inspection of the actual data inside, you can create an inventory of what you have in particular areas, which then leads us to the data protection side. Because once you understand your data, what is there, you can actually apply the proper data protection mechanism. Whether it's our patent and format preserving encryption, which is a form of AES, or tokenization for the structured data. But we also provide tools and mechanisms to do this on unstructured data. We can transparently encrypt files, attach the policy to the file that then travels with the file. So this enables you to, for example, collaborate or share information between different teams as well. And the policy always travels with the file. And that particular part of the policy also restricts particular operations. So you can define that you cannot perform cut and paste, or if you do cut and paste, what happens to the destination. So you can apply immediately the same policy to the destination file. And all of this is done in place again. So you could protect a SharePoint site, the HR SharePoint, encrypt all the files, and then only the people that have access to it can access the files. You can restrict the usage. You can restrict if data is only being allowed to be printed on a particular printer in the organization. You have a lot of flexibility in that part. But why do you do the data protection? Not only from a risk perspective, you also do it to gain better insight how data is actually used in your organization. Because now you can get near real-time insight into the usage and what people are doing with the data, whether it's structured or unstructured data. So you can see that Rainer opened a particular sensitive file and I copied it to a different location. You get that in almost real time. Now, if I'm, or on the structured side, if I'm in the help desk, and typically I do like 500 calls, why am I doing 50,000 today? Is there data exfiltration on my credentials going on? And you can see that in almost real time happening in your organization. So that gives you the capability to monitor the user behavior in the organization and find the abnormalities and take immediate action if those occur. But it's also the enforcement of the policies. So I can, if you do not allow creating copies or derivatives of a particular file, you can see that I've been trying to attempt that. So you get all those parts. And last but not least, we also have the data minimization. What happens to your data when it's old and no longer used, or applications that you retire? We can perform the application retirement and do all the data archiving in that aspect. Or we can identify out-of-date trivial data and take action and delete the data or archive it in particular locations. So at the end, when you look at what the voltage data privacy and protection side provides, is covering the full life cycle of the data. We can find it, we can act and protect it, you can get the insight, and we can look at how to dispose of old data. One item that we are introducing into the product is what we call a data loss risk calculator. This data loss risk calculator is based on the discovery components, whether it's structured or unstructured data, and part of our data insight. Now, when you scan for this particular example, we're using a database that has about 100,000 rows of customer PII. Now, when applying the algorithm of understanding what data fields are inside, how big the database is, we can give you a logarithmic scale of what is the risk associated with the data in case of a data breach. So in this case, the median of the loss would be about $850,000 in fines and lost business. But there's a 10% chance it only costs you almost $21 million. And the typical average that has been occurring is $2.9 million. So with this information at hand, you can better understand the operational risk that the company has by storing particular data points, and you can use this data to apply the proper protection strategies on those parts as well. So when you're in a larger organization and look at all your databases, you can quickly identify which are the high-risk environments that you have and focus on implementing voltage secure data, for example, in those databases. But it also gives you then the flexibility to understanding where your particular data stores are, whether it's SharePoint sites or whatever else you're using for collaboration, and the risk associated based on the insight of what is the actual financial risk to the organization in case of a data breach. We think this is a big step forward that empowers the CISO as well to understand what really is the financial risk that we're looking at. Why am I doing my protection strategies, and what's the benefit of doing the data protection? Because now you really understand the risk that the company is facing, and you can report on that to anybody involved. With that, I'm heading it back to Carol.
Very good, Rainer. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, I want to quickly go to a resources slide. We have just a couple of things that I want to mention that I think you'll find interesting. And we're providing some resources here to you, a guide from Tech Beacon to articles and a white paper on cloud data security. Also, I want to mention a webcast on that topic as well, and specifically around data analytics in the cloud. As enterprises are all in migration and or acceleration into the cloud, we think you'll find these pieces particularly interesting. We hope so. And we're providing a PDF with hyperlinks to that content for you. So most importantly, though, I wish to especially thank our wonderful customer speakers for their excellent presentations. Thank you so much, Dr. Klaus Brand, Jason Buck, Dave Mulligan, for your presentations. Wonderful information. We really appreciate the time and that you have dedicated to this and for sharing your experience. Thanks so much. And thank you also to our audience for joining us. Thank you for your questions, and we look forward to our next opportunity to engage with you. We wish you all a great rest of your day, and this concludes our Voltage Forum. Thank you.